The Vexari cubs just breached three-dimensional barriers to reach the human, and Highkeeper Thornax is having a complete mental breakdown in the observation room. The words crackled through every communication channel in the facility simultaneously, sending waves of pure terror through the staff. Vexari cubs, the most lethal juvenile predators in known space. The species whose young could tear through reinforced titanium with their milk teeth. The creatures that had, in recorded history, caused the extinction of 17 civilizations that tried to study them. And they'd escaped. All personnel to emergency stations. Thornax's voice had climbed 3 octaves higher than his usual authoritative baritone. Initiate protocol extinction. Seal all. Wait, what do you mean she's sitting with them? In the central observation room, every screen showed the same impossible scene. Kaylee, the human janitor who'd been hired 6 months ago, sat cross-legged on the floor of Corridor 7. Surrounding her were 5 Vexari cubs, each one the size of a small shuttle, each one capable of phasing through solid matter, each one possessing enough raw killing power to depopulate a small moon. They were competing for space in her lap. "Someone get me a weapon!" Ambassador Urix hissed, their crystalline form vibrating with barely contained panic. "Get me the Galactic Council! Get me a evacuation ship! Get me—" "They're purring," whispered Dr. Velnix, her 3 eyes wide with absolute horror. "By the ancestors, they're purring!" Thornax slammed 6 of his appendages against the console. "That's not purring. That's the sound they make before they phase into your chest cavity and eat your heart while you watch." "No." Velnix's voice had gone distant, clinical, the tone of a scientist watching their entire understanding of reality collapse. "No, I've studied Vexari vocal patterns for 40 years. That's contentment. That's the sound theorized in ancient texts. The sound their species lost 3 million years ago when they evolved into apex predators. On screen, one of the cubs, its scales shimmering with patterns that could induce seizures in most species, nudged its massive head against Kaylee's shoulder. She laughed and scratched behind what might have been its ear equivalent. "Oh, you want the good scratches? Yeah. Who's a terrifying interdimensional predator? You are. Yes, you are." "She's baby-talking them," Urix said flatly. "She's baby-talking the things that ended the Krev Empire." Thornax was cycling through security protocols so fast his manipulators blurred. "Nothing's working. The containment fields are active. The dimensional anchors are at full power. The neural dampeners are broadcasting at maximum. How did they get out?" "Sir," one of the technicians called out, her voice shaking. "I'm pulling up the logs now. They didn't break out. They solved the exit puzzle." "They what?" "The quantum lock sequence we installed last month. The one that requires solving a 17-dimensional mathematical equation. They worked together and solved it in under 4 minutes." The observation room went silent except for the sound of Kaylee's voice drifting through the speakers. All right. Everyone gets a turn. No phasing through your siblings to get ahead. We've talked about this. Use your words." One of the cubs made a sound like grinding metal and shattering glass. "Yes, that's very good. See? You can communicate without violence." Velnix's central eye was twitching. That sound just expressed a complex philosophical concept about pack hierarchy and resource distribution. Cubs this young shouldn't have language centers developed enough for abstract thought. "The humans corrupted them," Urix declared, their form flickering between colors that indicated extreme distress. "She's done something to their neurological development. This is a violation of 17 galactic accords." "Or," Velnix said slowly, pulling up holographic displays with trembling manipulators, "she's done something we never thought possible. Look at their neural scans." The displays showed 5 Vexari cubs with brain activity that shouldn't exist. Regions associated with empathy, social bonding, and emotional regulation, areas that remained dormant in their species for the first decade of life, were lit up like miniature stars. "That's impossible," Thornax breathed. "Vexari don't develop pack bonding until after their first hunt. They don't show empathy until they've killed at least 100 prey animals. It's hardwired into their evolution. Was hardwired, Velnix corrected, her voice hollow. Whatever that human is doing, she's rewriting 3 million years of evolutionary psychology. On screen, Kaylee was now distributing what appeared to be her lunch among the cubs. They waited patiently, each one sitting in a pose that their species' behavioral experts would have sworn was physiologically impossible. Relaxed, non-threatening, almost obedient. Good babies, see? Everyone gets a share when we're patient. No biting, no fighting. We use manners. One cub made a chittering sound and gently took a piece of food from her hand. Perfect. That's exactly how we do it. Irix's form was now pulsing between colors that didn't have names in most languages. I'm calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. This human has created a weapon more dangerous than anything we've ever encountered. A weapon? Velnix asked, unable to tear her eyes away from the screens. Don't you see? She's taking the galaxy's apex predators and making them tame, cooperative, intelligent beyond their years, loyal to her. If she can do this with Vexari cubs, what else can she do? What if other species find out humans have this ability? Thornax had gone very still, a sign of deep thought in his species. Pull up all security footage of the human since she started working here. Sir, that's 6 months of... Do it! The screens flickered, showing multiple angles, multiple dates. And there, in snippet after snippet, was a story no one had noticed. Kaylee during her night shifts, always near the juvenile containment wings. Kaylee stopping to look through observation windows. Kaylee making faces at creatures that could disembowel a battle mech. And the creatures making faces back. 3 months ago, Velnix whispered, pointing at a timestamp. That's the first time the Vexari cubs escaped. We thought it was a containment malfunction. The footage showed cubs phasing through their barriers at night, following some invisible trail. The next camera caught them outside Kaylee's supply closet. The human emerged, saw them, and... She didn't run, Thornax said. She didn't fight, Velnix added. She sat down, Irix finished, and she talked to them. They watched, frozen, as past Kaylee spent 2 hours with the cubs that night, teaching them games, showing them how to stack supply containers, laughing when they clumsily tried to imitate her movements. How many times? Thornax asked quietly. The technician's hands were shaking as she worked. 47 recorded instances. And sir, it's not just the Vexari. The thornback juveniles, the krill hatchlings, the devourer young. Every dangerous species in this facility has been visiting her. And we never noticed, Velnix said, because they always went back to their containments before morning. They weren't escaping. They were sneaking out to see her. On the main screen, Kaylee had started singing something. A simple melody, repetitive and soothing. The cubs had arranged themselves around her in a perfect circle, their reality-breaking bodies still and calm. That's a human lullaby, Irix said, their voice barely audible. I recognize it from the cultural database. It's what they sing to their young. She thinks they're children, Thornax realized, his voice filled with wonder and terror. To her, they're not weapons or monsters or evolutionary nightmares. They're just kids. An alarm began shrieking. New alerts flooded the observation room. Sir! Another technician practically screamed. The other juveniles are breaching, all of them. Thornback young in Sector 4, krill hatchlings in Sector 9. The devourer young just dissolved their containment tank. Where are they going? Irix demanded. They're all converging on Corridor 7. They're going to the human. The facility's emergency sirens created a symphony of terror that could be heard across 3 city sectors. Thornax watched his life's work, 30 years of carefully designed containment protocols, crumble in real time as every juvenile predator in the facility made their way toward one human janitor. Seal Corridor 7, he shouted. Deploy the emergency barriers. Activate the stasis fields. Barriers slammed down across the corridor. Energy fields crackled to life, creating walls of force that could stop a military cruiser. Stasis generators hummed, projecting waves designed to freeze matter at the molecular level. The juveniles walked through all of it like it wasn't there. Impossible, Velnix breathed, watching a thornback juvenile, covered in scales that could deflect particle beams. Simply shoulder through a barrier rated to withstand planetary bombardment. Those fields should stop anything organic. Maybe they would, Erich said darkly, if the creatures cared about being stopped. Look at them. They're not attacking the barriers. They're just ignoring them. It was true. A krill hatchling phased through a stasis field without slowing. 3 devourer young flowed around an energy barrier like water. They weren't breaking the defenses through force. They were bypassing them through sheer determination. And they all had the same destination. Kaylee looked up as the first of the new arrivals entered the corridor. A thornback juvenile, each of its scales capable of launching projectiles that could pierce ship hulls. Behind it came the others, a parade of the galaxy's most lethal young. "Oh hey, you guys escaped too?" she said cheerfully. "Well, come on then. But we're gonna need some ground rules because this corridor isn't big enough for everyone to sit in my lap." In the observation room, Thornax made a sound like air escaping from a dying engine. "She's going to establish behavioral guidelines for 15 of the most dangerous juvenile predators in known space, while they're in an uncontrolled environment during a facility-wide emergency. The Vexari cubs are moving," Velnix reported, her voice tight. "They're positioning themselves between the human and the new arrivals, defensive formation, protecting her." "Vexari don't protect," Erich stated. "They don't have pack instincts. They don't form protective bonds. They're solitary ambush predators from the moment they're born." "Tell them that," Velnix said, pointing at the screen. The 5 Vexari cubs had indeed arranged themselves in a protective semicircle around Kaylee. Their scales had shifted to threat display colors, their bodies tensed in ways that suggested imminent violence. They were broadcasting clear territorial signals, until Kaylee stood up and walked right through their defensive line. "None of that now," she said firmly, placing her hands on her hips. "We don't do the scary posturing thing. These are your friends. We share space. We don't claim it. Everyone sit." The Vexari cubs looked at each other, actual coordinated social interaction, and then sat. "Good. Now everyone else find a spot, gently. No pushing, no threatening displays, no—" She paused as a devourer young started to bubble menacingly. "Dissolving the floor. We've talked about that." The bubbling stopped. Thornax's communication device exploded with incoming transmissions, priority alerts, emergency protocols, and then the one he'd been dreading. "High Keeper Thornax." The voice was cold, ancient, carrying the weight of authority that spanned star systems. "This is Fleet Commander Crix. We're detecting massive containment breaches at your facility. We're inbound with suppression forces. ETA, 12 minutes. "The parents," Velnix whispered, her face draining of color. "They called the parents." "Commander, wait." Thornax started, but the transmission had already cut off. Erich's crystalline form had gone completely transparent, a fear response their species couldn't control. "The parents. They're bringing the parents. Do you understand what that means?" "It means," Velnix said, pulling up threat assessment files with shaking manipulators, "that we have 12 minutes before the galaxy's apex predators arrive at this facility, believing their young are in danger." The files painted a picture of pure nightmare. Adult Vexari, creatures that existed partially outside normal space-time. Thornback matriarchs, whose scales could withstand star core temperatures. Krill progenitors, beings of living shadow that fed on fear itself. Devourer ancients, entities that had consumed entire fleets. "We need to evacuate," Thornax said, his voice hollow. "The entire facility, the entire city sector, maybe the entire planet. In 12 minutes, Erich laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "We can't even get to the shuttles in 12 minutes. And where would we go? You think distance matters to creatures that can fold space? On screen, Kaylee had successfully arranged all 15 juveniles into a circle. They sat in perfect order, species that should be trying to kill each other, arranged like students in a classroom. Okay, so here's the thing, she was saying, completely unaware of the impending apocalypse. I know you all wanted to visit, and that's great. I love seeing you guys. But the grown-ups are having a bit of a panic attack about it, so we need to talk about boundaries. A Vexari cub made a questioning sound. I know, boundaries are hard. But think of it this way. When you want something, what works better? Phasing through walls and scaring everyone? Or asking nicely and waiting for an answer? Velnix was accessing historical records, her eyes darting across data streams. I'm looking at every recorded interaction with these species. Every containment breach, every escape attempt, every behavioral study. Nothing in 3,000 years of data shows them capable of what they're doing right now. She's teaching them impulse control, Irix observed, watching a devourer young visibly stop itself from absorbing a nearby panel. She's teaching them delayed gratification, concepts that shouldn't be possible for their developmental stage. Thornax was running predictive models, each one more catastrophic than the last. When the parents arrive and see their young surrounded by containment teams, we'll have approximately 4 seconds before they begin defensive protocols, which means 4 seconds before everything within a 100-kilometer radius becomes a crater. We could try to explain, Velnix suggested weakly. Explain what? Thornax's appendages spread in a gesture of helplessness. That a human has been secretly conducting unsanctioned behavioral modification on their cubs. That she's somehow rewired their fundamental psychology. That we allowed this to happen. The human didn't get permission? Irix's form flickered dangerously. Of course she didn't get permission. She's a janitor. She's not supposed to interact with the specimens at all, let alone teach them to... Thornax gestured at the screen where Kaylee was now demonstrating what appeared to be a sharing exercise using cleaning supplies. Cooperate in resource distribution scenarios. A new alert chimed, softer this time, but somehow more ominous. Sir, the technician said quietly, I'm picking up spatial distortions, multiple vectors. They're not waiting 12 minutes. How long? They're here. The parents just materialized outside the facility. All of them. Through the external cameras, they could see them. Ancient, terrible, beautiful. Creatures of nightmare and legend, drawn by some instinct to protect their young. And they were very, very angry. The facility's structure groaned as reality itself bent around the arriving parents. Adult Vexari materialized through overlapping dimensions, their forms too complex for standard optics to fully capture. Thornback matriarchs cracked the landing platforms with their weight, scales gleaming like weaponized starlight. Krill progenitors emerged from shadows that shouldn't exist, and 3 devourer ancients simply dissolved the outer walls to enter. All personnel, abandon the... Thornax's evacuation order died in his throat. Where would they go? The parents were already inside, moving through the facility like it was made of paper. They're heading straight for Corridor 7, Velnix reported, her voice remarkably calm for someone watching the end of everything. They know exactly where their young are. Irix was cycling through diplomatic protocols, finding each one useless. We can't fight them. We can't stop them. We can't even slow them down. In approximately 90 seconds, they're going to find their cubs with a human and... Wait, Velnix interrupted, zooming in on the feed. Look at the cubs. They're not afraid. She was right. The juveniles had noticed something, their heads turning toward the approaching adults with recognition. But there was no fear response, no submission posturing. Instead, they looked excited. A Vexari cub made a trilling sound and started to phase out. Oh, no, you don't, Kaylee said, grabbing what shouldn't be grabbable. A creature halfway between dimensions. We stay where we are. I don't care if your mom's coming. You don't run off without telling me first. Those are the rules. The cub solidified and sat back down, making a sound like apologetic wind chimes. Thank you. Now, when the grown-ups get here, we're all going to stay calm and use our indoor voices. Got it? 15 juvenile apex predators nodded in agreement. Good babies. Thornax was performing emergency calculations. The parents will breach this corridor in 40 seconds. We need to. He had no idea what they needed to do. Every scenario ended in catastrophic violence. She doesn't know, Velnix realized. The human. She doesn't know what's coming. Someone warn her, Irix demanded. Thornax activated the corridor's communication system. Kaylee, human, you need to move away from the juveniles right now. Their parents are... The wall exploded inward. Not with force, but with presence. An adult Vexari materialized, its form shifting through configurations that hurt to perceive. Behind it came a thornback matriarch, each step cracking the reinforced floor. Krill progenitors poured through like living darkness, and the devourer ancients simply emerged from spaces that hadn't existed moments before. The observation room filled with alarms, threat warnings, radiation spikes. Reality was breaking down from the sheer concentration of apex predator presence. This is it, Irix whispered. This is how it ends. The adults moved forward, massive and terrible, toward the humans sitting on the floor with their young. Their intent was clear. Identify the threat, eliminate it, protect the cubs. Kaylee looked up at them and smiled. Oh, hey, you must be the parents. I'm Kaylee. Sorry about the mess. We were just having a talk about boundaries and appropriate behavior. Your kids are absolutely wonderful, by the way. So smart. You must be very proud. She stood up, brushing dust off her maintenance uniform, completely unaware that she was addressing entities that had ended civilizations. One of the Vexari cubs ran like a child, to its parent, and made excited chirping sounds. The adult Vexari went very, very still. The adult Vexari lowered its massive head toward its cub, listening to sounds no other species could fully interpret. The cub was gesturing, actual gestural communication, something the species wasn't supposed to develop for years, toward Kaylee, making sounds that ranged from harmonious to enthusiastic. In the observation room, Velnix had accessed the translation algorithms. It's telling its parent about learning to share, about games, about... Her voice cracked. About making friends. Friends, Thornax repeated numbly. Vexari don't have friends. They have prey, rivals, and occasionally mates. That's the entire scope of their social structure. The adult Vexari's scales rippled through patterns that the behavioral database flagged as confusion, assessment, and something the computer labeled as error, pattern not recognized. A thornback juvenile approached its matriarch, making rumbling sounds. The matriarch's threatening posture softened, impossibly against every documented behavior pattern, as her offspring explained something with excited gestures toward the human. They're introducing her, Velnix breathed. The cubs are introducing the human to their parents, like she's someone important, someone they want them to meet. Kaylee, apparently deciding that the massive predators weren't immediately hostile, walked forward. Every species' survival instincts in the galaxy would have screamed to run. She walked up to a thornback matriarch whose scales could atomize her with a thought. Your little one has been doing so great with the group activities, Kaylee said conversationally. At first, there was some resource guarding, totally normal for the age, but we've been working on cooperative play, and the improvement has been amazing. The matriarch stared at the human, then at her offspring, then back at the human. I know they seem scary, Kaylee continued, apparently interpreting the stare as parental concern. But that's just because they're powerful. We've been working on channeling that into positive behaviors. Your kiddo actually helped break up an argument yesterday. Used those incredible scales to create a barrier between two cubs who were getting snippy. Conflict resolution. I was so proud. The thornback juvenile made an eager rumbling sound and demonstrated, its scales shifting to create a shimmering wall of force, but controlled, precise, purposeful, rather than aggressive. See? Kaylee beamed. They're learning that strength isn't just for fighting. It's for protecting, for helping, for making things better. In the observation room, Irix had gone completely still. She's giving them a progress report. She's giving progress reports to apex predators about their children's social development. A devourer. Ancient flowed forward, its form causing the air to shimmer and warp. 3 of its young immediately moved to intercept, positioning themselves between it and Kaylee. Not aggressively, but protectively. The Ancient stopped, its vast consciousness clearly trying to process what it was seeing. Its young, protecting, a prey creature. One of the devourer young made burbling sounds, gesturing with a pseudopod toward Kaylee, then toward the circle where they'd been sitting, then making motions that might have been explanatory. They're telling their parent about the rules, Velnix translated, her voice barely audible. About gentle behavior, about asking before taking, about... She stopped, staring at the data. About caring for others. Kaylee noticed the protective stance. Oh, that's so sweet, but your parent isn't going to hurt me, are you? She looked directly at the devourer Ancient, showing the kind of confidence that only came from complete ignorance of danger. We're all friends here. Your babies have been teaching the others such good behaviors. The Vexari cubs were having trouble with spatial awareness, kept phasing through each other accidentally, and your little ones showed them how to sense occupied space. It was beautiful cooperation. The Ancient hesitated. An entity that had consumed starships without pause was hesitating because a human praised its offspring. A krill progenitor emerged fully from the shadows, its form causing localized reality distortions. Its hatchlings immediately swarmed around it, making sounds like tearing silk and distant screams, which Kaylee had somehow learned meant excitement. Your kids are incredible problem solvers, Kaylee told the progenitor. Last week we had a puzzle exercise. I locked myself out of the supply closet on purpose, and they figured out how to manipulate the lock mechanism through shadow form infiltration. But they waited for permission first. They asked if they could help instead of just doing it. That's executive function development happening way ahead of schedule. The progenitor's reality distortions stabilized, lessened, as if the creature was consciously pulling back its destructive aura. Thornax was watching readouts that made no sense. Threat levels dropping, aggressive pheromones decreasing. The parents were calming down. This is impossible, Irix stated. She's defusing a multi-species aggressive response through parent-teacher conference protocols? More adults arrived. The remaining parents, drawn by the commotion. Each one entered ready for violence, for threats, for the need to protect their young. And each one was met by their offspring, excited and eager, telling them about the human. Kaylee greeted each parent with the same cheerful energy, commenting on their children's progress, highlighting specific achievements, explaining social developments with genuine pride and affection. Your little one has such a gentle spirit, she told a particularly massive Vexari parent. I know that seems contradictory given what they're capable of, but watch. She held out her hand, and the cub in question carefully, precisely, phased just the tip of one appendage through her palm without causing any harm whatsoever. That level of control is extraordinary. They're learning they don't have to be destructive to be powerful. The parent made a sound like cosmic strings vibrating. I know, right? I'm amazed every day by how much they're capable of when someone just believes in them. Velnix was crying, actual tears streaming down her face. She doesn't see monsters, she sees children. She's always seen children. 2 hours later, Thornax sat in his office reviewing documentation that would change galactic childcare forever. Outside, in Corridor 7, now officially redesignated as Primary Educational Zone, Kaylee was conducting what she called afternoon story time, while 15 apex predator parents watched with what could only be described as fascination. "The council is demanding a full report," Erix said, their forms still flickering with residual stress. "Every facility in the galaxy wants to know how we achieved these results." "We didn't achieve anything," Thornax replied, watching the security feed. "She did. While we spent 3,000 years trying to contain them, she spent 3 months teaching them to be better." On screen, Kaylee was reading from a datapad, some human children's story about friendship and cooperation. The juveniles sat in rapt attention. Their parents, creatures that had terrified civilizations, had settled into observation positions. One thornback matriarch was actually taking notes. Velnix entered, carrying documentation that would reshape xenobiological understanding. "The neural scans are conclusive. Every juvenile in this facility shows advanced social development, enhanced problem-solving, and emotional regulation that shouldn't exist for their species. The parents want to know if we can expand the program." "Expand?" Thornax asked. "Every apex predator species in the galaxy is requesting human childcare consultants. They're offering to pay whatever we ask. The waiting list already has 43 species on it." Erix made a sound like crackling energy. "One human. She's going to revolutionize how the entire galaxy raises its young, because she treated monsters like children." Through the speakers, Kaylee's voice drifted up. "Okay, who wants to help me clean up? Remember, we work together, we finish faster, and then everyone gets snack time." 15 juvenile apex predators, creatures capable of ending worlds, eagerly volunteered for cleaning duty. Thornax pulled up the new contract he'd drafted. Chief Enrichment Specialist, salary increased by 4,000%, authority to redesign all juvenile interaction protocols, and she gets her own supply closet, fully stocked. "Think she'll accept?" Velnix asked. On screen, Kaylee had finished story time and was heading toward the door, cubs trailing behind her like ducklings. She paused, looked back at the parents still watching, and grinned. "Same time tomorrow? Great! Oh, and next week we're starting fractions. Fair warning, math can get messy." Thornax smiled for the first time in hours. "Yeah, she'll accept."